Hello, my name is Alejandro Salcedo, and this is Burning It Down, Conversations with Young People of Color in Theater. And today we have Braden Raquena with us. Yes, we do. Everybody clap. Everybody clap.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So the way that I start this for everybody is just give me a little quick rundown of your theater journey. You don't have to get into like super specifics, but just like what kind of got you here and where you started.
So in the sixth grade, you have to pick an elective or whatever, or at least in the school district that I went to. And I remember really wanting to pick band because they got to go to Six Flags and I wanted to play the saxophone and be that girl. But I was like very outgoing and like extroverted. So my mom was like, we were like going over like the sheet the night before it was due, and she was like, what do you want to pick? And I was like, band. And she was like, oh, well, what about theater? And I was like, what? No, that's for girls. Ironic now. I was like, no, that's for girls. I don't think I want to do that. And she was like, well, just try it, like maybe you'll like it, like, and if not, we can figure something out and get you out of it and put you in band, but just I want you to see if you like it or whatever. And here we are. So I've been doing it ever since, mainly through school plays and musicals and things like that. And then now I go to TCU for acting, about to leave TCU with an acting degree. So.
Ooh, that's
Mm.
Wait, so going back to like the feeling that it was like a girl's thing, was there like a moment in your life where you were like, oh, this the way that I thought about this was stupid and I want to do this for the rest of my life and that's okay?
Yeah, I think I kept through it with middle school, which was a weird experience because I also you have to like play sports. Like it was required to play sports, which is interesting when you think about it because you're required to take athletics, or it was more formatted in the way that you were either in PE or you were in athletics, and there were two very different things. PE was seen as like it's all of like the arts kids and like the nerds and like whatever that didn't want to do anything athletic, or you would be in athletics and be accepted. That's basically how it was formatted, or how the culture was at middle school. So I chose athletics because I didn't want to be seen as that. But then I also did theater at the same time. So I would show up early to school to do football practice, and then I would stay after to do theater. But it wasn't until I got to high school to where I was like, where people kind of go more into their own things and stop caring about each other. I mean, they still do. It's still kind of weird, but people started to like care less about what other people did. So that's when I started to get really into it and was like, oh, well, I like really love this, so I'm gonna stick with this.
All right, that's awesome. And how did that like correlate to like your like coming out journey? Was that like around the same time, or was it like did you accept kind of everything at once, or was it like a big like wave?
Um, no, I definitely like accepted the like theater aspect part, and I came out to my mom in between sophomore and junior year. Yeah, between sophomore and junior year. Um, I think that's when I started to become more like outward about my passion for theater though, and started to like share it with others and like not be afraid to talk about it, because like I think I had a lot of like internalized like um I don't know, like I would make fun of it with other people too. Like when people would ask me what I do, I'd be like, oh, I'm in theater, yuck, right? Um, so that I could be like the funny one and be like, oh, he's the funny one. He's in theater, but he's not like the other theater people. Um, so that was like that weird year and a half when I like accepted like that I wanted to do theater. And then when I came out, I was like, screw that. I'm a theater girl. I'm like, I'm proud of what I do. Like I want to do this because I think it'll make a difference. And
That was the word because that was the same thing for me in middle school. I was like a little bit earlier. I came out. What's the second year of middle school? Seventh grade? Is that what it is?
yeah,
Seventh grade.
yeah.
And so, and so I did all these art. I've always done like tons of arts. I was in choir, band, and theater. I did like everything. And
Mhm.
so then there was like this like obviously like white centric varsity sports people, and
Yeah.
I hung out with them because I was like the funny guy. And so like it wasn't until like the latter half of middle school where like I came out and everything. But even then they were like really open to it. But of course, it felt like a thing where like I had to wait for them to let me in, and I had to like focus on them in order to be let into like the popular crowd, which like never really led anywhere.
I feel like that's such a common thing for like closeted gay guys, like to to be the funny one, to get acceptance first so that you have that leverage before you come out. Like I've heard a lot of people talk about that. I mean, that's what I did. Did I do it intentionally? No, but like it was just a subconscious thing that I was like, oh, if I get these people laughing, like they'll like me. And then when I came out, it was an easier experience than most because those people were like, oh, but it's Braden. Like he's different than the other gays, which is very toxic, but that's kind of how I like got through it, I guess, is that I was always like the funny one. I was always the one like cracking jokes in class and stuff. And then so people, when I came out, they were like, oh, but he's still Braden, which is, I don't know.
Yeah, very problematic. Now
Yeah,
that I'm thinking about
very
it,
problematic.
but it's just like it's what you do to like get through, which is crazy. But then like for me, which is weird, like I used that getting through and like it went through into theater because I love making people laugh.
Yeah.
So like that's still something that I do. I wonder if it's the same like deep rooted thing of like I want to make this white audience accept me and laugh. Have you
Yeah.
ever felt like anytime like I remember you talking to me about like going out after shows and all that stuff. How do you feel like receiving feedback and stuff from like a majority white audience since like we go to TCU and just theater in general is very white.
Yeah.
But how do you
Yeah.
feel?
I don't know. It's weird because it's so hard to like take a step back and realize it because I'm so used to it. It's just like mine, it's just like the normal. Like I don't, when I go out after a show and like, talk to people and stuff, it's like, it's just what I expect to see. Like hardly do I ever expect to see like, a very diverse group when I come out into the lobby of TCU. And unless there's a person of color in the show, if there's not a person of color in the show, hardly are there any people there unless they're theater majors who are coming to like support or like see the show. But I guess I'm so used to it. I would like to see like, I think I've had like one experience in my life, and I think it was at TCU, and it was after like the Diviners, and it was somebody's little sister, somebody's little brother, and they were like, um, and they were a person of color, and they were like, it was so not like cool, like seeing you up there like as like the main story and the main plot line and having like your own thing because you weren't a side character who was like the funny person of color. You were just like the lead and you were telling the story and it was just like a normal thing. It's not a normal thing, but it was portrayed as a normal thing, which was like cool to see, and that was good to hear. But it's like I've only heard that once. And not saying that I like need to hear that, but it's like I'm sure many young, you know, BIPOC people would love to see more people like that in lead roles and think that they can do that too.
Yeah. With that, I was like, what was like your first experience with like someone like, and you can say like TV movies, which is like we're all kind of like exposed to earlier on in theater. But if you had like a theater person too that you saw up on stage and you were like, this is me, or I feel like I relate very closely to this, that wasn't like a white person, because I know we're all used to relating to white people and being like, oh, I can relate to this part of this and this part of this. When did like you see like most of yourself on stage or on TV or in a movie? It's hard. It really is
I
hard.
like seriously like I don't know because often like in TV shows and movies when I was like growing up, the Asian people were always side characters and they were always making fun of Asian people. Like the first thing that comes to mind is like The Hangover, and I forget what the actor's name is, but he was looked at as like the funny Asian guy or like the weird Asian guy, that was like nude in a scene and it was like hilarious because whatever. First time I've seen a Filipino on stage was Eva Noblezada and Miss Saigon when I saw it on Broadway when I was, you know, 18. So, um, and she's mixed as well, but that was the first time. I think that's why that show means so much to me too, is because it was a lead Filipino actress who is strong and um, can belt her face off and was nominated for a Tony and things like that. And I like look up to her so much because of that. But I mean, like, I truly can't think of like seeing somebody on screen when I was growing up. And if I did see someone, it was because they were gay, not because they were of color. It was because I looked up to them for being out and like prideful, but never intersectionally. Never did I see those two things at once. It was either one or the other. So.
Mhm. When you were looking in high school and stuff, had you already decided that you were like, I'm gonna go full throttle with this, even though I didn't see anybody else like me, and go like, well, what the hell, whatever? Or was there like some kind of like hold, like restraint inside of yourself that was like, if it's like smaller of a chance, should I be going for this?
Um, I honestly was just too passionate about it to even think about that. And as problematic as it is, the people like in high school that were like supportive of me and told me to do it, a big thing that I always heard was that you should go for it because you're a person of color, because it'll be easier. That's what I always heard, because theater is looking for people like you right now, and you will offer like something, like it'll be easier for you to get into schools because you are Filipino. And how many theater programs have a Filipino, gay guy who wants to become an acting major? Hardly none. So it's bad that like motivated me thinking about it now, because I'm like, oh, well, I'm more than that. Like, I think my talent would have carried me as well. But yeah, I don't know. I always was just like, I'm gonna do this, and if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But I'm too in it now, and I'm too like passionate about it to think about the fact that like um, my race or my ethnicity will have any sort of play in what I get. And it wasn't until that I got to, because get this, TCU theater program is probably more diverse than what my theater program in high school was. So when I got here and started hearing people's perspectives, I was like, oh, I never even thought about that, because I guess I just like was never like celebrated or never like looked at for being Filipino, because I am half. So in high school, it was like nobody ever like mentioned it or like talked about it. Like it was just like I was like sometimes white passing. So that was never really a thing. And then I got to TCU and I was like, oh, well, I should be like proud of this, and I should talk about this because it is half of who I am. And that's important. But yeah, sorry, that was like a really long answer.
No, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I was going through everything because I personally in high school I was in a very diverse school, so I didn't see like race as any part of like the casting pool unless we did West Side Story, which I was like, okay, white people on one side, Hispanic people on the other, and even then the Hispanic people weren't all Hispanic, but we don't talk about that. and I had to like look inside myself when I was looking for like college audition pieces and be like, what can I go for? And in my brain, it was very broad because I will look at you in the eyes and say on my like repertoire list that I was looking at, it was like Hedwig and the Angry Inch because I saw a black person play it once.
Mm-hmm.
It was Kinky Boots because I knew it was a black person and I didn't know that it was specifically a black person, but I was like person of color something that I can fit into. And it wasn't until I was doing that I had to look and be like, this is my box, which sucked. And it like brought the life out of like what I wanted to do for college. I ended up just picking like material that I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I can pick whatever I want. Like I should be able to go back and forth unless it's like Book of Mormon or something that no one should correlate to Book of Mormon anymore. But based on that, I had to like look inside myself and be like, what parts of me do I want to highlight? And ultimately I just want to go with my comedy. I want to go with my good singing because that's what I felt like I was strongest in. And that's what we should all be allowed to just do.
Yeah.
Give our all and just wait to see what we get back and not have to worry that this is a part of the judgment.
Yeah.
Are there any like big dream roles that you've gotten a chance to play or that you still want to play that aren't like necessarily tied to your race? Or even if they are tied to your race?
A big role that I want to play is the MC in Cabaret, which I don't know if that would ever be a possibility because, you know, it takes place where it takes place, and the MC is a historically white person. I think like right when COVID started, a theater around DFW was doing Cabaret, and the MC was black, and I think that was the first time that I've ever seen that. But yeah, I've had a lot of people tell me that I can't play that because he's supposed to be white, but I'm like, he's literally not even a real person. Like in the show, he's not real. Like he's always like looming and like a figure of people's imagination, and he just like stands for a lot of the themes in the show. So like I don't see why can't be, you know, any gender, any race, whatever. Like I don't know, but I've always been told that.
Part of that is probably like the acceptability of like seeing like a queer person or like a queer centric out there kind of person on stage and being like, but we can still relate to his whiteness so great.
Yeah.
That's great. That's what I feel like most of it is. Because if not, this work that is very shakening to an audience, it kind of like digs at you and it kind of makes that reaction inside of you. There still has to be, I guess, some kind of thing you can relate to. And so the big thing that people relate to is being white, because that's who goes and watches the show, even though it doesn't have anything to do with that. Because I remember I went to go watch that show when they were like touring it.
Yeah.
And I had the same reaction that everybody else did. Do I have German roots inside me? No.
Yeah.
But you know about history. You know about what happened.
Yeah.
Anybody like can relate to that. So I don't understand the big racial thing in that one.
Not either, but I've always been told that. But yeah, oh, on that note, I've always been, or in college, like I remember I was told freshman year that I have an advantage because I can play a lot of different things because of the fact that I'm mixed. And you know, they were like, you can play, or you can be in West Side Story, or you can be in Miss Saigon, or you can be in, you know, The King and I. Like you're racially ambiguous, which I was always like, oh, that's awesome. Like great, like more opportunities for me. Work, like so excited for all this like work that I'm gonna get because I can like, you know, tell all these stories because my skin is the color that it is. And now I'm like, that was extremely problematic because, and I will be completely transparent, and a lot of people know this about me, I, like one of my dream roles for the longest time was Paul in A Chorus Line, because I was like, I related to his queerness, and I loved the monologue that he did, and I loved the part that he played in the show. And, you know, professors and people would always tell me that's a very real possibility for you because, you know, because he's queer. But I was never educated to take into the fact that he's Hispanic, and a big part of his story is being Hispanic. And like, yes, I'm queer, and yes, I'm a person of color, but I'm Filipino. That's not the same experience as a Hispanic person of color because the cultures are different, and almost every circumstance is different. So now I'm like, people are like, oh, you're Asian, you know, you can play all these like parts, like every, you know, Asian ethnicity, like Japanese, Chinese, Filipino, all this stuff. And I'm like, but can I? Like, my experience is not, especially also because I'm mixed, I'm not like full Filipino either. So it's like, whatever. And then people are like, well, how many Filipino roles do you see? And I'm like, well, then I guess I just have to wait or to play a Filipino role that's meant for Filipinos, or I don't know. It's a very controversial subject because I don't know. Yeah.
And there's this like guilt inside of us for like taking even taking like white roles. There's a guilt inside of each of us.
Oh, absolutely.
It's stupid because white people have been taking our roles for the longest amount of times.
Yeah, but it's like we know what it feels like, so we're empathetic with other, you know, people of color when we take their roles because we're like, oh, well, this has been taken from me before, or my race has been made fun of by a white person who's played this role. So I get what you would feel if I was a Filipino person playing your Hispanic role. It's not meant for me. It's meant for you and your story, not me. But it's like I go to school and I pay money to be educated about the theater world, and it isn't until me about to be a senior where I'm realizing that this term racially ambiguous, all these 3 years of my education I like went with, and now I'm like, well, that was stupid, like I shouldn't have done that.
No, even then, it's not like our fault because it's not
Yeah.
even our theaters, like our theater department's fault. It's Broadway's fault. And anything that is going to be on Broadway that will have representation in it will most likely have been written by a person of color because
Oh
we
yeah.
write for ourselves, because we have to write for ourselves.
No, yeah, I mean that's what goes back to, like, you know, talking about like Filipino representation. It's like you're never going to see Filipino representation unless Filipinos write it, which I mean is a good thing because you don't want like white people writing a Filipino story, but it's like, you know, that's you have to like wait, or you have to like wait for somebody to do something so you get a chance because one, if not, there's going to be a white person behind the table telling a white story, or two, there's going to be a white person behind the table telling a black story, or a person of color story, or whatever, and that's both of those things are not okay.
No, and I know that I felt like a pressure inside me to be like, well, I have to be the one to do it. I have to be the one to, and that's awful. That's not something to put on a. I just want to perform. I just want to do my own thing. I don't want to have to be forced to make myself available. Like Lin-Manuel Miranda's very lucky. He got like put in like the same thing where he's like, this needs to happen, and I want to make this happen, and so that intersected perfectly for him. Which I'm like, that's great.
Yeah, yeah, but it's interesting to me how I don't know where he would be if he didn't write In the Heights. Like he had to write a story about his experience first before he could write something about a white experience using all people of color or mostly people of color, which is sucks that he had to, like, you know, do something huge, get recognized, and then do something, you know, talking about the founding fathers, like from a Hispanic man. Like you have to like get your foot in the door and prove to us, like there's a sense of like feeling like you need to prove yourself before you can do something else, like, you know.
Yeah, and then that work gets taken in by white people to be like, well, is there? I did a production of In the Heights, and there was a school across the ways that decided to do it as well, and it was full of white people, and they were just like, it's not about being Hispanic, it's about living in the ghetto, and I'm like, fuck you, no, no, you don't get to say that. And then there was
No,
like a black lead, he was black, and so I was like, he's a person of color, that's great, but to stand with your cast and to feel like that's an okay thing to say, no.
no, no.
I'm sorry that your theater director was incorrect, but like someone has to tell them,
Yeah,
and especially now, I hope someone speaks up and tells people, because I'm like, this isn't right.
it isn't right. Every experience, like that's also the thing, is that people just like group people of color into one thing. It's like, well, they're all interchangeable, you know. I mean, they all aren't white, so we can just move people around as we choose because, you know, they all have the same experience, you know, they're not white. No.
But the difference is they won't do that with white people. They wouldn't dare. They wouldn't dare put a leading man in a supporting role. They would never dream of it.
No, 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 no.
Never. Because that's not where their talents are.
No.
It's, oh my God.
Buffoonery.
Clownery, that's clownery love.
Clownery. That is clownery.
Let's talk about the big elephant in the room. Because I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, but I want to go more into it. You're going into your senior year of college to go into theater in a time where theater is not happening. How are you coping with that?
It's absolutely terrifying because I don't, it's like no one can predict something like this. I mean, when you go to school to be a theater major, you know that there's going to be some struggle after. And some is generous, you know, maybe a lot of struggle. You might change careers, but you're ready for that. And when you choose this major, you mentally prepare for that first. You don't mentally prepare for for this, for like theater not happening at all. Like, I don't know, it's scary, but I'm not gonna like stop doing it or try to find something else, because I feel like theater people are the most adaptable people. So I mean, we did a play reading of Ernest over Zoom. I've done some things for, I did a 10-minute play reading for Stage West. I did a monologue for Amphibian. So it's like people are still working. It's just we're just gonna have to find a different way to do it. And I mean, we already found a different way to do showcase. We're doing like we're preparing 3 separate showcases, in case of like whatever situation that we're put in by the time we get there. So
I want to see regional production stuff and ultimately Broadway go to just be like, this is a show that is classical that we're just gonna cast with all people of color just for fun, just because that's what's possible. Because that people come in there looking for, I want the straight leading male, like big tough white guy. People go in there thinking that.
yeah,
And if you try and tell me they don't, you're a liar. You're a liar. You're a liar. You've never lied so much.
you're a liar and a cheat.
And so you can't just sit there and tell me that. And so I want them to go in and be like, I want a funny guy that just happens to be brown. That's
Yeah.
what I want to see. Where the story doesn't have to be about the race, because all the stories right now are either about paying for a person of color, or it's about making fun of that person of color, or it's about that person of color leading the white person's story ahead.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's,
Yeah. And every story about being queer is about the hardships. Or if it's a love story, you have to include them coming out first, or them struggling to come out, or them being closeted relationship. It can't just be a love story. No. No, 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 no. Only time, and even then it's not, there was still a little bit of that, is Schitt's Creek, where I saw probably it's one of the reasons why it's my favorite TV show of all time. It's because it was one of the most like seamless, like gay love stories. It was like any other story. And like one of the characters had to come out, but it was like one episode and like 5 minutes of that episode, and it was just like seamless. And I think they did it to show that like it's not easy, but this can be normal. And you know, Schitt's Creek takes place in like this old town, like very like, you know, looking at it, it would be like a conservative old town with traditional values. But this relationship that they had, no one ever like said anything. It was just like normal. It was like everyone was like, "Oh, hey, like good to see you." And that was so weird to see, and it made me so emotional watching that, because I was like, I tried to think of another time that I like saw something like this, and it's like I think about, what shows have I seen with gay love stories? Love, Simon, no, all about coming out, all about secrets. Calling by Your Name, no, all about secrets, all about, you know, coming out, all about hardships. Like
we got Modern Family, but
modern,
like all the time the dad kind of just doesn't agree with their lifestyle the whole time, and so
yeah,
towards the end he kind of gets accepting about it, and it's about them adopting and the hardships of adopting. So it's just like all the hardships that come and everything. And
yeah.
guess what? All the things we've named, white people.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because you can't be both. Like you can't be recognized for your queerness and your, you know, your color. You have to pick one, and you have to go with that, because if those things are seen together, it's like the white audience is like, what? Two oppressions? No, I can't. How how am I going to keep track of all this? I mean, they're going through so many things. Like, how am I going to, but it's like, that's the reality for a lot of people. And it's, I don't know. That's where it gets like kind of hypocritical, because like, yes, I want to be cast as those people who have to tell those stories of oppression but I don't want to be limited to that either. And I think you kind of talked about this in your last episode too, but it's like, the argument's always like, well, you tell us that you want to be cast as normal parts, but then when we cast a straight person as, you know, someone who's going through coming out, you get mad too. And I'm like, yeah, I do. Because why can't I be seen as both? Why can't it be intersectional? Why do I have to pick one? Why do I have to be the gay that wants to play straight roles and straight roles only to prove a point that I can do it? Or why do I have to pick the one that just gets told about all the time that I get beat by my father because I'm gay? Like, why do I have to pick one? Why can't I do both? And fortunately enough, I've gotten to play both, but that's not the reality for a lot of people. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see things have changed. It's been 3 months. Well, how long has it been since like this, like the revolution started?
The recent surge, May, like the mid-May. So it's been like 2 months.
Yeah. That's enough time to come up with a plan.
That's enough time. What else are they doing? Like what else are
trying to keep their theater open?
Like there's nothing else to do, so do something. Like, yeah.
I want to see them pick PLC shows that don't have to do with any trauma, and if they don't have them, bring someone in to write them. You got money. I want them to make programs for people of color to come watch theater. All these productions that are happening online, it's like $35 to watch for like an hour or like 2 hours, and I'm just like, I get that you spent all this money to do this. That's great, and I get this is difficult, but like, if after like your 2 weeks of show and you reach out and be like, hey, by the way, people of color, like, we'll give you this for free. Well, it's not like it's going anywhere. Where's it going?
Yeah.
And then if you like talk to like the production companies or like the companies that give out the rights to stuff, they should understand what's happening around the world, and like there needs to be more opportunities for us to watch things.
Yeah.
I want to hear like when was like your like big theater trip? Have you had like a big theater trip in your life, or like what was like the first like big theater show you watched?
I saw The Lion King on tour when it came to New Orleans, and that was my first like. I think that was my first like professional live theater performance, and I was like, oh my god, this is incredible. But yeah, that's like the extent of theater in Louisiana, because like if I wouldn't have moved to Texas, I wouldn't have done theater. I don't know what I'd be doing right now, because there's like no arts, like there's no funding for arts, there's no accessibility to arts, no resources, no anything to get into art. So yeah, I'm very fortunate that I moved to Texas, where it is, you know, a very accessible thing in public education. But yeah, that's a different subject. But yeah, that Lion King, which I'm glad it was Lion King, because I and maybe that's why I like, that's like my first memory of theater, and it was seeing all of these like beautiful people of color on stage and being celebrated, in like one of the stories that I used to watch all the time as like a child. So that was like very surreal experience for me, and I'm glad that was my first experience, and it wasn't seeing something with, you know, all white people and me start to get this image of my mind that if I wasn't white that I couldn't do it. So maybe it does go back to that for me. That's why I you know, that was my first trip, my first theater trip.
High quality show. Good choice.
Oh god.
Well, Brayden, thank you so much for being with me today, talking about stuff.
Thank you.
Very important stuff, because I was like, it's so like hard to be a minority in theater, but like getting to talk to someone else about all this kind of stuff makes it so much easier. And I feel like we, as like a community, didn't feel like the permission to do that up until all of this happened. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just glad that you joined me today, and that I got to talk to you and like got to see your side, because we're just learning from each other, and then we can teach the white people about what to do.
Yeah. And get them on our side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, wear your masks. Stick up for people of color, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.